Welcome to Alabama Manufacturing Now, hosted by Alabama Technology Network, a podcast where we cover a wide array of challenges, solutions, and innovations for manufacturers. We're your host, Whitney Barlow, Supplier Development Manager. And I'm Paige Caulfield, Marketing and PR Manager.
Welcome back to Alabama Manufacturing Now. We are so excited to welcome our next two guests with the Apex Accelerator in Alabama, Lindsay Fray.
Good morning.
And Phillip Marks. How are y'all today?
Doing great.
Fantastic. Okay, so we're going to get started real quick with just some high-level background intro about what is Apex Accelerator and what it does, and what are your roles there?
We're a Department of Defense budgeted program. And our sole goal is to help small businesses get plugged into the government contracting sector.
Okay.
Everything from SAM registrations to SBA, Dynamic Small Business Search Profile completions. A lot of your SBA certifications, your woman-owned small businesses, your service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses, your hub zones and things of that nature. We help facilitate a lot of that certification and either right there in the office or, however they want to do that. And helping clients get plugged into the contracting, the bidding process. We do a lot of things in our offices, but one of our biggest things that we do is our bid delivery system.
Okay.
We're daily, whether you're a product or a service industry or a company. The government, I tell clients, I said, the government doesn't make anything. Literally everything is bought. Every product and every service is bought. So if you're in the product or service business, there are bids coming out daily that we help make you aware of and facilitate that through our bid delivery system. It comes straight to your email every day. And then any number of things.
That's a good idea.
That is a good idea.
And agencies, if you came into my office and said, hey, I'd really like to get in touch with, say, Teledyne Brown, well, I would give you I was fixing to say a person's name and number. I'd give you a person's name, and you can just call that person, Office of Small Business Programs. The basis of what we do all goes back to SBA congressional law. Is 23% or more of the business or a prime contractor. They're out there looking for small businesses, woman-owned small businesses, small disadvantaged businesses, hub zones, and service-disabled veterans, because they have to fulfill that set-aside annually. Now, some agencies do a world more than that. Some agencies will get up into the 40 and 50% small business on their federal outlay budgets every year.
But some will go to the 23, and so some might be trying to search for that last minute.
You could have a contracting office that's maybe behind on woman-owned or something like that, and sometimes they'll email us and say, hey, we'd like to see all your HVAC, hub zone, small businesses.
We're seeing more and more of that.
Well, that's
over
huge.
the last few months.
Absolutely.
We have a lot of the small business personnel, whether, like you said, the federal side or a prime contractor, they are contacting us constantly looking for certain things. Sometimes it's something fairly easy that we have a lot of clients for. Sometimes it's one of those that, they're definitely having a hard time finding. But, we are seeing that they are relying on us a whole lot more.
Yeah.
And your prime contractor core, whether it's Boeing's, Lockheed's, Teledynes, or big construction companies, they have to fulfill that same set-aside as the federal government does because they're a prime contractor.
Got it.
Not only are federal agencies looking for small businesses,
Yeah.
prime contractors are looking for those same folks.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
So what kind of businesses should be paying attention to government contracting and why?
Well, really, like he already mentioned, the government buys everything. So any business can look into it, right? That's what I try to tell our clients is, yes, they'll buy anything. They might not buy it all the time,
right?
But they're definitely going to buy. So any business who has already at least gotten some experience in the private world first, we always want to put that out there. It's best to go ahead and have business elsewhere first.
Yeah.
But any business who already has that, can definitely look into it. Now, there's certain areas like manufacturing that is a huge priority to the federal government right now.
Right.
So they are begging for manufacturers. Now, there's certain things, there are certain requirements they're going to have that's very, very hard, especially for some of the smaller, what maybe we call mom and pop businesses to meet. But, I mean, they're to the point where they're doing what they can to help these small businesses who need that assistance meet those standards. So especially if you're in the manufacturing world, things like that, it's a great time to get into government contracting.
Yeah.
To follow up on that, so what kind of standards are you talking about?
Oh my goodness, the ISOs, and you
like,
may know
"There's
a little
so
bit more about.
many."
Yes, there's a ton, and they're even though you're a small business, they're not necessarily going to say, "Well, you're small, so we don't have to." We're not going to worry about. You've got to have the same standards that Northrop Grumman or whoever else would have. So it's just harder for small businesses to do that. So I don't know if you can come up with any of the other standards.
Well, the standards are what they are because they're kind of set in stone. But a lot of it will come down to the contracting officer, and as they say, the contracting officers are king. So
Right.
whatever decision they want to make or he or she wants to make, that's the standard that contractor is going to have to play under. And whether it's in the bid process or award process and what's expected of them.
So ISO and different things like that, there are entities in the state
Yes.
like ATN
Yes.
that offer those at very reasonable costs. So that is one reason why we thought this would be an amazing podcast.
Yes.
Is we thought that we are a great dovetail that
I don't know. I can help you with this part, but good luck with that. But yeah, I agree. I think, it takes a village.
it does.
And I think we have some great people in our village.
Yes. Yes, that is what connections are all about.
Yes.
So in connections and working with all these small businesses, how do y'all feel like, how do you keep the passion? Because as we know, government, all governments from local to the federal can sometimes be very grueling and very daunting. So how do y'all keep passionate about it?
When a client wins an award, I mean, it's when you see that and the hard work they've put into it, and the hard work we've helped put into it, and then they win that and perform on it and get paid. It's a pretty unique process when you're
Rewarding.
right down there. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It is very rewarding. So the last of our new advisors that came through, I kept telling them, a lot of people don't realize how difficult it is to get into government contracting,
Right.
And I think we might touch on this later, but due to YouTube and TikTok, it's kind of romanticized what it looks like.
Making money's romanticized on
Yes,
YouTube
well,
and TikTok.
absolutely, just in general. But a lot of the clients that come to us have an inaccurate idea of what it looks like. And so, not every one of your clients is going to be successful. So, that's what I told my last advisor that came on. I was like, look, don't give up because, you're going to get this, the first one that you get that wins a contract, you're going to be like, this is why I do this. This is what it's for.
Right.
So I agree with Phillip that it's when someone actually, is successful, whether it's actually winning a contract or making it to the next step of something to win a contract, it makes it all worthwhile.
Yeah.
They have, you're like the football coach.
Yes.
Football coach. When the kid just finally hits the home run or gets the touchdown that you knew could do it, you're like, yes, I knew it.
Yes.
I knew
Finally
you could
paid
do
off
this.
all the work.
All
Yes.
the work, all
So
the hard work.
What are some of the misconceptions that businesses have about government contracts?
I would say one of the biggest ones that I hear and see and have to get over that is thinking the government's already got somebody doing that for them. I mean, we've been in
Okay.
business since 1776. Surely they have somebody. Well, that's not necessarily the case. Now, are they going to have a lot of roofers? Oh, absolutely. But there ain't enough roofers around to go around.
Right.
And so the biggest misconception is letting them know that the government is actually out there looking for them. And it may be their past performance that they've been working with for 10 or 20 years outside the government business.
Right.
It actually just puts them straight into the government business right off the bat. Yeah.
Interesting. I
Now-
would have thought that it would have been like stability, or like, oh, it's just a contract. It's not a, a full-time, long-term type of situation.
Oh, wow. Oh, no.
Well,
Oh, yeah.
now something funny about that is a lot of my clients come to me and say, I want it for stability. Now,
Oh,
a lot of
interesting.
them don't realize that it takes a long time sometimes to win your first contract.
Right.
But the way the government makes contracts now, a lot of the times are for a year plus so many option years if you don't mess them up. So at least, there's some extra there. But I think on the opposite side of what Phillip says, he's completely right. The government needs all of these things. But what I see a lot, though, is the opposite side where, again, they've been to TikTok and they've heard that if you register in this super secret thing called sam.gov, all your wildest dreams will come true.
Super secret.
On the dark web.
And so a lot of people will come to me and say, I need to get registered on SAM. And then they will, and they'll be like, well, where's my contract? That's not how it works.
Yeah.
So there's two sides to it. Yes, they're looking for things. But they're also, there's plenty of options out there too for a lot of, different things.
Right.
But yeah, so I'd say it's both spectrums there, but I'd say that those really are probably the two biggest misconceptions. They don't need me or they need me tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I've got clients, several clients, who only do government contracting. They're only in the federal sector.
Yep.
Then I've got some who government is just a revenue stream out there along with everything else. And talking about all the movies and TikTok and stuff, I actually have a client who searched us out because he was watching the movie War Dogs,
Oh,
and they mentioned
It's a great movie.
Sam in the movie. I mean, that's a real thing.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
really happened. If those guys had just played by the rules, like we talked about earlier, they'd probably still be in business. But when they mentioned Sam in the movie, he was like, "Hey, I need to look at that." And now that we're on all the bids on sound.gov, he was actually able to see us there as Apex Accelerator, and they sent him straight to me. And so
interesting.
That's really cool. They don't realize that you have to have a sam.gov to do anything with the federal government.
Anything.
You want a grant, anything.
right.
So there's lots of reasons to have a SAM number, and you start learning all the acronyms of the worlds. And so speaking of the acronyms, when they come to you after they learn that you don't rub your magic Apex Accelerator genie bottle, and here comes the genie, and he's like, and I grant you all your contracts. How do y'all help them navigate the acronyms and understanding the alphabet soup and which actually applies to them? I'm sure that's a real
Google.
No, I'm just kidding.
I will be the first to say I am the biggest fan of Google, but
Absolutely.
But I think every client's going to be different, so their path might be a little bit different, and each advisor has a different way of doing things. I'm big on the marketing side, so with me, it's showing them what different free websites are out there that the government sponsors to see, who your competition is, who the buyers that are buying what you sell are, how they're buying it, things like that. So that's kind of the next step. It's a lot of work, but that's the next step for me. Now, Phillip has a little bit different process he goes through, I think, with clients. And again, though, it's going to depend on the individual client.
A lot of clients come to me already in business.
Yeah.
Okay, and they know their product, they know their service. They just need to know how to sell it to the government. Okay, and but then I have clients that come to me and say, "Hey, so and so told me I've been working for him for 10 years and I'm out on my own now, and he says I need to come talk to y'all." So we take those clients straight off the bus, basically, who don't know anything. They don't know what SBA stands for, and a lot of that. If I can remember to get back to where I'm talking about, a lot of our federal agencies that we deal, especially in Huntsville, a lot of folks will get to them, and they don't know what a NAICS code is really. They don't know what all this stuff is. So the contracting office there, whether it's NASA, the Army, or whomever, MDA, Missile Defense Agency, they'll just say, hey, you need to get in touch with your local Apex Accelerator. Because they know that's what we do, to bring all these folks up to speed, get them, train them on NAICS codes. A lot of companies think they only have one NAICS code. I've got some that'll have 10, 15, 20, you know.
yeah.
And sam.gov, you know, and things of that nature. And it's just a matter of educating.
Yeah, the next code thing is very interesting because for some things you only have to give one. Like, just give us, we just need a next code. And so then for there on after, they think that's it. And I'm like, no, every process, everything you do has a next code. And they're like, oh, so I have all these abilities? Yes. Meaning that if you stamp for this, you can stamp for all of this. And they have their next code as something completely different. It's very interesting.
And if, you know, someone sees this and they deal in NAICS codes, I recommend it's kind of like Coke, soda, and pop. Depends on what part of the nation you're in, is what you call when they call me. It's because that contracting officer's wrote up under a different NAICS code than maybe the one in the Deep South did, and they just missed it. So when you're looking on that NAICS, that census.gov, any NAICS code that you're out there on the margin with that you can possibly do something under, especially the corresponding indexes, I'd put it in there. Because contracting officers are going to look for you on SAM. They're going to search people out by zip codes and cities and states. And your NAICS code, and if it's not there, it is not going to come up.
I agree. And I tell all of my clients when they start looking for opportunities, you know, SAM, again, is another place you can find federal opportunities. I tell them don't even look at the NAICS codes. Like, don't put in NAICS code. You use keywords just for that reason because they can use whatever NAICS code they want to. And it's a lot of the times it's not the one that you would think it was going to be.
Right. It's a game with the NAICS codes. I agree with you on that.
There's so many.
I was having a conversation with someone. I know what it was on. It was on a award that we work with 2 other associations to do annually, and I had an economic developer contact me and ask me some questions, and I'm like, yes, they do this, but they also do this, this, and this is what you would apply for it under, not this. And she's like, oh, okay. So like it's a unique, but understanding that is not something that you don't learn that on TikTok.
No.
Maybe we should do TikToks.
Yeah, and going back to our bid match and the way we send these bids to these clients daily works off of NAICS codes as well as keywords and phrases. Had a client several months back. He's in the oils, lubes, and grease business and jet fuel. And he had gotten a bid through a keyword, Rotella 15W40 motor oil. Well, that's diesel engine oil. But a contracting officer at a Air Force base and a contracting officer at a Marine base had written it up under 2 totally different NAICS codes for the same thing because they sell it in 55-gallon drums. That's how they buy it. But he got it under keywords and phrases, Rotella 15W40.
Huh. So see?
You know, just the bid match alone, keywords and phrases and NAICS codes, that's where it's all at. Yeah.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So with cybersecurity requirements like CMMC becoming more common, how is Apex helping businesses stay compliant?
It's called the FAR.
Yeah.
52.204-21.
Yeah, that's the starting point.
That's the starting point.
So, you know, I started with the program about 10 years ago, and they were already talking about CMMC then. Now, it's evolved and continues to evolve, but I'm definitely seeing now that even besides the government, these primes, we held events with the Navy not too long ago, and every single one of those primes we're talking about, you know, you're going to have these CMMC requirements in place for these subcontractors, and it's not easy. So we are not specialists in cybersecurity, you know, but we host quarterly trainings for our clients on the topic, on not just on CMMC. As you know, with the security aspect, there's national security. The big keyword now is FOCI, the foreign ownership and influence. You've got the physical security side of it. So not only with the cybersecurity side with CMMC, I mean, there's also, you have to have sign-in sheets at your physical
yes.
location, things like that, you know. And of course, there's a cybersecurity side. So we do quarterly workshops about all of those, letting our clients know what updates there have been over the last 24 hours, because we know things do change. I know I had gone a few weeks without checking into it, and the next thing I knew, they had split level 2 into 2 different groups, and I'm like, whoa, I've missed something. So yeah, I wasn't doing that presentation, so fortunately, yeah. And one thing is that I have found that I can add value to our clients with the CMMC. There's a lot of these companies out there that offer you free resources. And, you know, if you don't know that, you could go to 600 different ones and not find what you're looking for. But I have, I think, done a pretty good job of consolidating and putting some of those resources together to where if a company wanted to try to do this on their own, they could. Now, it's not easy, but they could without having to hire someone out. But anyways, that's kind of where we are on the CMMC side. We're going to do everything we can, keep everybody updated, and try to give them every resource we can without them having to pay anything. As we know, though, with CMMC, once you get to especially the level 2s, there's going to be cost. But, you know, we're going to try to get them as much as we can without having to put any more cost into it.
Right. Which is really what I think makes y'all very valuable. Right. And again, why I'm so glad that we're able to not only assist on our side with our clients, but also give y'all a leeway. So how do y'all work on the workforce development with all the different entities that exist? Just in Alabama, we're like a big old wheel with lots of spokes, like the very intense bicycles, you know, that have the 9 million little metal spokes. That's what I feel like we are with workforce. We are. The different partner groups that we have. So how are some of the things that y'all do with that?
What, do you want to start, or do you want me to?
We, especially some of us that's been in the business for a while, you kind of build up people that you can call on. There's a couple of agencies right there around the Shoals area. I'm from the University of North Alabama there in Florence. And then other people around the state, especially with this marine industrial base coming in. When someone needs certain aspects of a company, whether it be a welder or a machinist or a fabricator or a sewer or something like that, you got to build up that client that database where you can go, look, give me just a little bit, let me get that name and number for you. And we'll call people. I'll call them, you know, whether it's Todd or someone like that. Absolutely.
That's interesting y'all say that, because we do the same thing. So our staff, from our executive director down, we build clients and relationships, and they will reach out to us, which is also part of the MEP network. We'll have states reach out to us, which is where I learned a lot about folk. Like, that's a big deal.
It's a big deal.
Who you're, where the product originally begins. But we have learned that when they feel comfortable with you, your client feels comfortable with you, they're your go-to person for anything and everything that has to do with what they're used to doing. Like, they probably get their own accountant and maybe order their own cleaning supplies, but anything outside of that, they're really reaching out and trying to figure who it is and what's the best resource, because it's a really cost-effective way.
It is. And I don't think businesses realize what resources are out there.
Yes.
For example, you know, with us, you know, one of the biggest complaints that our clients, whether it's on the government contracting side or elsewhere, is we need workforce. We need staff, you know, and, you know, we've finally been able to kind of get some resources together to help find. Yeah. You know, not that we're necessarily out there headhunting for you, but, you know, there's this other organization you can reach out to. Have you tried them? Have you tried that? So, but yeah, so that's one of the biggest issues. And if there's no workforce, then there's no company, and then there's no government contracts, and then the government doesn't get what they need. So we all, you know, we're all in a circle. We're all needed.
And then they go to another state, and we don't want that.
And then they go to another state.
We do not want that.
We want everyone buying everything from Alabama.
That's right.
That's correct.
And the government recognizes that. There's, you know, the deficiency in the defense industrial base and the government industrial base as far as labor force, workforce, whatever we want to call it. And when there's a red light going off at the federal level, then that red light is funneled down to, the local level. And y'all see it. I mean, y'all probably see it more than daily, talked about more than maybe we would individually in our offices, but we do run into it.
It's an interesting dynamic, the federal
sure.
government, and how it moves like a big battleship. But when it starts moving, it's just like the cybersecurity 10 years ago. And then all of a sudden, we talk, and it's just like it reaches the top of the hill and down it goes. And it just makes it very interesting. Paige?
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about misconceptions, but what is your advice to businesses who are looking to pursue contracts and just don't know where to start?
Go ahead.
Especially clients that come into the office, I can just show them. And we have success stories. We have testimonials. And we work under confidentiality agreements.
Right.
So unless I get your permission to mention you to someone else, they don't necessarily know that they're with us. But success stories alone, I mean, you would really, really be surprised just out riding around Alabama, in northwest Alabama. When you see that little blue metal building and there's 23 cars sitting out in front of it, you would really be surprised what may be going on in there.
Right.
Amen, brother.
And I tell clients, and I show clients, and I show them awards. And you get them to talk, and they say, well, I think that's what so-and-so does. And sometimes you can say, they probably do. And then sometimes you just have to smile at them and say, yeah, that's probably what they do. Because they hear these little things. They hear whispers. But then when they come to the office and we show them that you can actually talk about this stuff and this stuff is real.
Right.
And you would absolutely be surprised what the government buys and really be surprised who's supplying it to them.
And really be surprised who's supplying it to them.
Yeah,
It's amazing how many times I've been to, sometimes we'll actually go visit the client instead of them coming to us.
Right.
And, there could be someone from your back door that you're like, I had no idea you were doing this, and you were such a big part of, government contracting.
For sure.
And again, I'm kind of going to be the devil's advocate here. While, yes, there's the opportunities, a lot of the times the misconceptions I get is you get this SAM and then the floodgates open and there's way more to it.
Right.
Depending on where you are in your business, if you've, like I had already mentioned, if you're already doing a lot of business in the private industry and things like that, you could jump into government contracting and just instantly, be a fit. But if you haven't, there's this long line of building past performance. And when we say past performance, it's just you've got to have proof. The government wants to see proof that you can do the job.
Right.
Yeah, they want a good price for it, but at the end of the day, they just want to know that you can do the job.
Correct.
So if you don't have that proof, you're not going to be competitive because there's still going to be other companies competing. So I think a big misconception that I see a lot is people think, okay, I've got this SAM, I've got this certification. Now, I'm going to win a contract next week. And that's just not typically how it works. Now, hey, it does happen every now and then. If you've got a niche product or something, especially on the R&D side right now, R&D within the federal government is huge. If you've got something like that, you could instantly get some kind of amazing contract or even grant of some sort. But other than that, you're going to be competing. It might be against one person. It might be against 6,000 other companies. But you're still going to be competing.
Yeah.
And I tell clients on the front end, well, I can do this or I can do that or I can. On the front end, you need to stay in your lane. Stay with what you're good at.
Oh, I say that all the time.
Oh, man.
Stay in your lane.
Stay in your lane. And then, 5-10 years from now, contracting officer may call you. I have a roofing company right now who only does federal work.
No.
And they're also in the fencing business.
Okay.
Because a contracting officer asked them one day, hey, can y'all do fencing? And we're like, yeah.
Sure.
Now, they hadn't been in the fencing business, but they
Delivered.
could look at it and say, we can do that. On the front end, I would have said I'd stay away from the fencing business. But, 5 or 10 years in, you kind of know the game, and you know how it's played.
Yeah.
Then you can look at out there on the margin and see if there's something. Yeah, we can do that. And there's a lot of companies out there, large companies, that started off as small little companies in their lane, 30 years ago, and now they're large prime corporations.
And another thing that we see a lot of is people gravitate toward federal government. But there's your state government, and there's your local government. And there are huge opportunities. Typically, I tell a lot of my newer clients, start locally, especially on the construction world, with all of these federal grants that come down, but then the money is coming from your local municipalities or something like that. Those are great ways to get your foot in the door. That's typically, and what's funny though is that's how I typically see it. But I have one client in particular who had been doing federal contracting forever and never even thought about doing, the local stuff until I said something to him. And then I saw him a few months ago and he was like, "You were completely right. This has opened a whole new," so not just focusing on federal, there's other avenues.
There is, and with the road building program that the state has, and all the different avenues that we have, that we are constantly turning out with money behind it, it's a great way to look. And most likely, when it's a program locally, it's coming through your county or your local city government. And so
I tell clients, the federal government's huge, and they're buying this, and this. State and local governments are smaller, but they're still buying this, this, and this. I mean, like Lindsay said, it's a very easy and convenient way to get into the government process, is start with that state and local.
Yeah, you're correct. We have to buy everything.
Yeah, that's
everything.
True. So you mentioned earlier success stories. Is there one that you could share with us that you have seen through Apex Accelerator support?
Yeah. Without calling names.
Okay, that's fine. Sure, yeah.
I got several actually, but one
What's
in
your
particular,
best pick?
The best one.
The best one.
Would be an individual. He's been with me for about 12 years. And he's a one-man operation, but he sells plumbing supplies to the government.
I knew it was going to be him.
Oh,
Defense Logistics Agency.
plumbing. Who would have thought?
Not only like Tuscaloosa and all the cities, we have Lowe's and Home Depots and things of that nature. Your federal government's set up on the same process. We have, Anniston Army Depot. We have Defense Logistics Agency, Columbus, Ohio, DLA in Philadelphia. They do all things warfighter, clothing, food, anything having to do with the warfighter. DLA in Columbus, Ohio, they manage a little over 5 million, I believe now, national stock numbered items, plumbing supplies, stuff you go in Lowe's and buy. And he is plugged into that, and he does extremely well. A lot of it right off our bid system. The first thing he did was he called me and said, "I need to get on your bid system." And another one in particular is a construction company. They deal in asphalting and concreting. And they won an award back last year, pretty sizable award out of Mississippi for the VA. And I was on the phone one day a few months back, and I just asked him, I said, not taking away from y'all, I said, but why did the contractor officer award y'all that? Because it was a lot for their very first bid and their very first award.
Oh, so those do happen.
They do.
And this goes back to what we're the very beginning of this thing on who can do government contracting. He just kind of laughed. He said, "Well, we asked the contracting officer the same thing when they were on site down there in Jackson." He said, "Why'd y'all award this to us?" And he said the contracting officer told him, he said, "Y'all are a new business, but you're not new people." And I thought, wow, that's a good way of putting that.
Yeah.
And so those success stories come from people who start from the ground up, and success stories come from folks who are in the business but get into the government business. There may be a new business, but they're not new people.
Right.
So they know how to do the work, but
They're just diversifying.
And I've got one prime contractor in let's just say Decatur. All that business that manages all of that product in that particular prime contractor came from a telephone call right off of our prospecting list. I gave it to him. I said, John, I said, he called him, asked for an appointment. They gave him an appointment. Now, when he drove up over there in Decatur and looked at that huge plant, he could have said, they've already got somebody doing that for us or doing that for them. Mm-hmm. Why would they need me? Well, he went on in. He's just no salesman like me by trade. and they've been doing business with him for several years just off of that telephone call and asking for an appointment.
That's
and
awesome.
It's an incredible process to see it on all different levels. Mm-hmm. And so success stories, we have them.
Yes.
We have them in all different categories and award amounts and some very appreciative, success stories. And it's just sitting there watching that small business. Coming down this morning, left home at 5:45, and my wife had ridden with me, and at 6:20, we're going by one of my clients, and they're at work. Mm-hmm. I said, hey, they're so-and-so's already at work. Come by another one, say 6:30, 6:45, another little community on the way to Tuscaloosa, and I said, well, they're already at work. Mm-hmm. These guys are at work. These guys are reading our bids at 5:38 in the morning or 1:15 in the morning because they're working. They're small businesses, and when you can help those guys do that and create a success story with them and for them, that's what makes it all worthwhile.
And so for anybody listening that's not from Alabama, to understand what he's talking about from the Shoals to Tuscaloosa, that is very rural Alabama.
Yeah.
But you would really
Extremely rural, yes. So, but what I'm saying is, this isn't.
Absolutely.
All you need is some tenacity,
right?
And a drive.
Well, everybody watches television. Everybody watches the news, and they think all this business comes from some big shiny chrome building up in Washington D.C. That's just not the case.
No,
you would really be surprised.
I think that's what's so interesting about all the different things that we do is that our tools are out there to help those companies, whether they're in rural, eclectic Alabama or in Huntsville. It doesn't matter where they're located. If you are an entrepreneur or you're a company that really wants to grow and thrive, but you need skills, you need standards, you need certifications, or you just need a pathway to figure out how to do. Yes. That these are all resources that are there.
Absolutely. And in Huntsville, Alabama alone right now, there are more contracting officers. And these are people who manage and deal with government budgets and spending. Mm-hmm. There are more contracting officers in Huntsville than anywhere else in the nation. Pentagon, St. Louis,
Wow.
San Antonio, or San Diego right now. Absolutely.
Well, that's pretty. My heart
Huge.
goes out to them for managing a federal
Huge.
budget.
There's so many of them up there. There's so many agencies and so much business. But then I've got clients, and Lindsay does as well, who don't necessarily do any business in Huntsville. Mm-hmm. They're doing business around the nation.
Around the state.
And outside the nation.
Or just around the state.
Around the state.
We have Huntsville. It is huge, booming, but there's plenty of other federal, state, and local agencies throughout the state.
I think you just made a really good point. The United States is just not in the United States.
Right.
So we have places outside the United States that also is having to procure items as well. Absolutely. We talked a little bit about the future. Y'all kind of hint on that. So what are trends that you see? So tell me, especially with the current change of administration, what do you see the future of Apex? And you hinted to that y'all kind of restructured not a couple 10 years ago or so. So where do y'all see your footprint continuing on?
So let's back up a little bit. So if you've been in the government contracting world for a long time, the term PTAC may be something that's familiar to you. We were called PTAC, Procurement Technical Assistance Centers, for
35 years.
35 years. Before, when we were funded by DLA, Defense Logistics Agency, about close to 3 years now ago, we swapped funders to DoD Office of Small Business Programs. Besides changing our name to Apex, and when everyone asks what's the acronym, there is no acronym. So apparently millennials don't like acronyms, and so it's just Apex, like Apex.
Okay.
Yeah. So, so a lot of things changed then. We actually were a huge part at that point of building the government industrial base. I mean, that is our goal is we're supposed to build it, you know, whether it's new businesses or ones who are already in there, but, you know, there's potential for them to sell something else. So we'll continue to keep doing that. Besides just that, now, especially with the administration change and things like that, like I had mentioned before, R&D, especially defense R&D, is huge right now. I mean, they are wanting to find, you know, the biggest, baddest, greatest, latest things that other countries can't get their hands on. And most of the time, that comes from a small business. Believe it or not, it comes from a one or two mastermind, you know, person. And a lot of the times that's through seed funding called SBIR, STTR. Some people call it SIB or SITR, however you want to consider it. But there's going to be a whole lot more reliance on that sort of thing, us helping clients in that area. We're still helping clients in every area, so don't think we're just going with the R&Ds. But that's going to be big. The manufacturing side, like I'd already said, that is huge. They are begging for manufacturers. And as things change with the Defense Production Act, we don't know what all is going to continue to be on there, what's going to be changing, but trying to help businesses, you know, who have the potential to be a part of that. So that's going to be big.
Yeah, and the businesses and industries. President Trump just did the DPA for the coal industry because we're at a deficiency nationwide for energy. You know, we just don't have enough energy. So you're going to start seeing possibly, and there's DPAs kind of ongoing all the time, but some of the bigger ones that you're going to see and have seen publicly just over the last several months, you'll probably start seeing those come back into play, especially with our defense industrial base, to assist, whether it's energy or munitions or the shipbuilding industry, submarine industry in Mobile. Because you don't just go out and put those things into place and they're freestanding. You know, 10,000 employees over the next 10 years, that's a lot of folks.
It is.
To be sucked into a area called Mobile. But they're out there, and there's companies all over Alabama that can play in that game. We already have some. Already played in it.
Now, again, though, those are some of the trending areas, but government's always going to need construction.
Yes. Absolutely.
Janitorial. I mean, anything. Plumbing. Yes. So it's not that you've missed your chance.
Yeah.
Those are just some of the bigger things. But
Clothing.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that when you start thinking about what each level of government uses on a daily basis, and then you have the realization that all of it has to be bought, services and products. That is a lot of different companies that Alabama companies can really play into and take advantage of, and we would love for that to happen.
Yes.
Because nothing's better than growing right here in the
Absolutely.
state.
Homegrown.
I'm a firm believer of that one. We learned a lot in the past couple of years over the impact of supply chain and what that looks like for our country, and how we have let a lot of stuff go overseas to maybe not such friendly countries that are manufacturing for us, and pulling that all back here in country. Specifically really focusing on what we can bring back to Alabama. That's a huge piece that I am very excited because of the MIB that we got to really talk to y'all and figure out what exactly it is Apex does. And now y'all know exactly what it is that ATN does. I'm confident we can help some of your clients.
Yes, I agree. And I think we need to do some kind of joint workshop for
that would be
our
great.
companies who need what you have.
You heard it here first.
Yes. So up next. Yes.
Well, I had written it down, the ISO certification.
Yeah.
Yes.
So sometimes those primes, they hit our companies and say,
Yeah.
are you ISO? You need to get that, and then come back and see us, and they're like,
What?
Yeah.
What?
I don't have 10,000, I don't have 20,000.
Right. And so, and then the fact that we, just like y'all, we're all over the state, it gives a great benefit of trying to work and getting to know each pocket of ATN staff that's in each part of Alabama. See, this is just a match made in heaven. Y'all just didn't know it.
That's something that I don't know if you mentioned or if it's already brought up before, but we are all over the state. So we have advisors all over the state, north, south, east, west. So, these days, a lot of things are done through Zoom and things like that. But if you want to sit down with someone, there is someone close enough for you to sit down with. And Phillip is all about sitting down with someone. We can accommodate however. Like I said, there's someone everywhere all over the state.
And we're housed in the community colleges all over the state. So
we're housed in all the 4-year institutions.
Okay.
So it's we're just, and I think that's what's interesting, and which is why we have really enjoyed doing this podcast, is bringing in all these resources, both just from what you offer. We've had some transportation. We've had all different, just to show manufacturers, because y'all know we get in the bubble.
Yeah.
And it's easy to be in the bubble. So
one thing I'm going to mention real quick before we leave is micro purchasing.
Okay.
Especially when you're in the rural areas. It's like, well, there's just no government business around here. If you have a federal office or a federal agency that's in your community, there's probably one, if not two, depending on how large your community is, who has a P card, purchase card, debit card, so to speak. And those guys are, you can be, and most of them are certified up to $10,000 a day. They don't do that every day, but they can buy your product or service and not be SAM registered. I mean, I've got clients that come to me, they call me and say, I want to get in the government business. It's like, okay, good. Come to the office, they sit down. I start going over this stuff. That's what I do for, and they'll call an agency, and I'm like, oh, well, you're already doing business with the government.
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm just doing it. And then they get to thinking, well, I am doing it.
You are.
Yeah. So I already had that performance.
Because they don't perceive that as government, because it's down local where they live in their community. Because they're looking for that big shiny, light somewhere and sign that says U.S. government. So I would recommend. I've got several clients who have that micro purchase agreements, and I tell them you need to treat that like a little gold mine. Try not to do anything that's going to cause that contracting officer to maybe call somebody else. But if you've got that, and you got that relationship built up with them, you need to cultivate that, because that can lead to another one of their offices 3 hours from where they're at, and it's like, hey, Jim told me to give you a call that y'all do this for them. Yeah, we do. Right. Can you do it for us? I've had that happen. So there's all different ways to do business with the government. There's not just that one way. So
and just understanding who the people are and building those relationships.
Absolutely.
That's all it is. You're not selling to the government. You're selling to a person.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
That's
exactly
a very
right.
good. That's a excellent point.
I did not make that up. I can't remember when I heard that, but it's true.
No, that's quoted by Lindsay Fray.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
You heard it here.
That's right.
Well, Paige,
Her email is.
Well, thank you so much, Phillip and Lindsay, for joining us today. If anybody out there wants to get in touch with Apex, what's the best way to do that?
Well, you can call me at 256-765-4668 or POMarks@ua.edu.
And you can email or call me. Phone number 256-405-3477. I am going on vacation next week, so I probably won't answer next week. Or email me at Lindsay, LINDSAY.F as in Frank, REY @ua.edu. Or you can go to our website, alapex.org. Yep.
All right.
And if you call me and you're 7 hours from our office, I'll say, hey, you need to call
so-and-so. We can at least get you with the right person.
Absolutely.
So.
Well, that's wonderful. Is there anything else that you would like to add before we end it today?
Just can't wait to meet some new clients. And like I said, especially if you're in manufacturing, the government needs you. So reach out to us.
You are needed. We want you.
We want you.
We want you.
All right,
so
guys.
much.
Thank you so much. Goodbye. See you next time.